My wife cheated on me with my boss, so I exposed them and got them both fired. The day my world shattered wasn't marked by an explosive argument or a dramatic discovery. It was quieter than that. I had come home early from work, exhausted and hoping to surprise my wife with dinner. What I found instead was a string of messages on her open laptop, messages that left no doubt about her affair. But it wasn't just the betrayal that gutted me. It was him, my boss, a man I had trusted and respected, someone I thought was a mentor. The messages were filled with inside jokes, suggestive comments, and even photos that turned my stomach. They had been carrying on behind my back, laughing at my ignorance. At first, I didn't know how to react. I felt paralyzed, as though the air had been sucked out of the room. The betrayal was like a wave, dragging me under before I even realized I was drowning. I sat there for hours, staring at the screen, feeling the anger boil under my skin. They thought I was clueless, weak, a pawn in their game. That was their mistake. I decided I wouldn't confront them outright. No shouting matches, no dramatic scenes. I would dismantle their lives the way they had dismantled my trust. Piece by piece, methodically, and with precision. The first step was to act as if nothing had changed. My wife still kissed me goodbye every morning, still made excuses for her late nights, still smiled at me like nothing was wrong. It took everything I had to keep up the facade. I'd lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, planning my moves. Her car? It was in my name. The phone she used to text him? Also under my account. The house we shared? Paid for almost entirely with my income. I started pulling strings quietly. I called the car dealership and reported her vehicle as stolen. It was impounded the next day while she was at work. She called me in a panic, and I feigned surprise, telling her I'd look into it. Her phone? Cancelled. When she complained about it not working, I played dumb and suggested she call customer service. And the house? I removed her access to our joint bank accounts and rerouted the mortgage payments to her personal account. At first, she thought it was all a series of unfortunate coincidences. Then came the cracks. Her frustration grew, and I could see the panic start to seep through her carefully constructed lies. She'd spend hours on the phone trying to sort out the mess, completely unaware that I was the one orchestrating it. Next, I turned my attention to my boss. At work, I started documenting everything. He was careless, often using company resources for personal errands, scheduling fake meetings to leave early, and padding expense reports. I kept meticulous records, compiling a dossier so damning that HR wouldn't be able to ignore it. But I needed more, something public, something that would ruin him in front of everyone he cared about. That's when the company gala came into play. It was an annual event, attended by executives, employees, shareholders, and their families. The perfect stage. In the weeks leading up to the gala, I made anonymous tips to the event organizers, suggesting they look into his professional misconduct. I sent them redacted copies of his emails with my wife, framing it as a violation of company policy. By the time the gala rolled around, the whispers had already started. The night of the event, I dressed in my best suit and watched as he walked in, arm in arm with his wife, completely oblivious to the storm brewing around him. I mingled, pretending to enjoy the evening, while my friend, a tech-savvy genius, set up the final piece of the puzzle. During his speech, as he droned on about company milestones and future goals, the projector screen behind him lit up. At first, it displayed a photo of him at a company retreat. Innocent enough. Then came the texts. One after another, they appeared on the screen, their contents leaving no room for interpretation. Gasps rippled through the room. His wife's face turned ashen, her hand flying to her mouth. He stopped mid-sentence, turning to see the evidence of his affair plastered behind him. The room descended into chaos. Executives whispered to each other, employees stared, and his wife stormed out in tears. He tried to regain control, stammering excuses, but it was too late. Security escorted him out of the building, and by the end of the night, he was out of a job. As for my wife, her downfall was equally calculated. The night of the gala, she came home to find her belongings packed and waiting on the curb. I was sitting on the couch, divorce papers in hand. She tried to explain, to cry, to beg for forgiveness, but I had no interest in her excuses. I handed her the papers and told her she had until the end of the week to find somewhere else to stay. She left in tears, calling her family and friends for support. But I had already contacted them, sharing the details of her betrayal. Most of them sided with me, cutting her off entirely. She was left with nothing. No home, no car, no money, and no one to turn to. In the end, my boss lost his career, his reputation, and his marriage. My wife lost her comfort, her stability, and the life she'd built on lies. And me? I walked away with a sense of closure, ready to start fresh. But that's not where the story ends. The weeks following the gala were a whirlwind. My wife's pleas turned to anger, then to threats. She tried to take legal action, but with everything in my name and the documented proof of her affair, she didn't have a leg to stand on. Her lawyer dropped her case within a month. My boss, on the other hand, tried to save face. He sent emails to the board claiming the evidence was fabricated, blaming me for professional sabotage. Unfortunately for him, the board didn't care. They were more concerned about the potential lawsuits from shareholders and employees who had witnessed the spectacle. He'd underestimated me, just like my wife had. In the aftermath, I decided to take some time off work. The stress had taken its toll, and I needed to focus on rebuilding my life. I moved to a new city, started therapy, and began pursuing hobbies I'd long abandoned. For the first time in years, I felt free. Every now and then, I'd hear about my wife or my former boss through mutual acquaintances. She'd moved in with a friend, working a minimum wage job to make ends meet. He'd tried to start his own consulting firm, but word of his misconduct followed him wherever he went. Neither of them had the power to hurt me anymore. This isn't a story of redemption or forgiveness. It's a story of betrayal, and the satisfaction of watching those who wronged me face the consequences of their actions. Some might say I went too far. Others might call it justice. But one thing's for sure: what goes around truly does come around.